Well, welcome everybody. I'm just going to share with you a different perspective of what we've all just done this morning. But first I'll just introduce myself. I don't like normally talking about myself. I usually just say go to the website and read about me or look at the videos. But just to give you a bit of a quick rundown, is that straight enough there?
Mm-hmm.
It's a bit hard to see. I've been doing everything to do with health, fitness, healing, consciousness for the last 35 years all around the world. And it started off when I actually have full memory of being in utero. For whatever reason, I've only ever met 2 or 3 other people who have full memory from conception. And then my mother nearly miscarried when I was 6 months. And then I had a traumatic birth. I was born jaundiced, I wasn't breastfed, nearly died of gastro, had a vaccine reaction, had food allergies and food intolerances. So I started off behind the 8 ball. And as a result of that, I was severely ADHD, what they call hyperactive back then. And I had 3 serious head injuries before the age of 3.5. And the last one gave me a severe head injury. It actually gave me a brain injury. And it didn't get diagnosed until probably 10 years ago. And what happened was that I was living in Ballarat at the time, and we were living next door to a swimming pool, and I ran from the swing area on the grass onto some wet concrete, and as I stepped onto the wet concrete, my foot slipped back and I hit my head on the gutter. And I had severe headaches after that for 2 years, and eventually my parents took me down to Geelong to see Tom Bowen, and he treated me, took away all the reactivity, and the headaches went away, but it left me with this brain injury and severe dyslexia. And anybody who knows homeopathy will also know that one of the main symptoms of head injuries is that they stop utilising sodium sulfate, which results in a suicidal tendency. So I was suicidal until I was 22. So I went through all the way through to year 12 completely undiagnosed, and I went back and looked at all my old school books when I actually realised that I was severely dyslexic, and I could tell within 5 seconds. And I just couldn't believe that, you know, even though my mum worked at the high school and a lot of our family friends were the teachers, and you know, we had family friends that were chiropractors, it somehow got overlooked. And so anyway, I struggled with everything until I was 22, and I had a suicidal experience. I had divine intervention. And then 6 months after that, I was a racing car driver, and I used to always drive excessively fast everywhere, and because I knew how the intuitive process worked, I never got booked for speeding. And I was speeding home one night, and this being appeared in the car beside me, told me to slow down seconds before what would have been a fatal accident. And that being ended up staying with me for 2.5 years, and I ended up going to India, and I met this being in the flesh. He was a supernatural being, and I spent from 91 to 98 with him and 8 others like him. And they gave me what I affectionately call boot to bum therapy. And everybody's going, oh my God, you're so lucky to have spent all that time with the masters. And I'm saying, yeah, well, the only reason why I had to be there was because my life was so pathetic. I needed that intensive care treatment. It was like being in an intensive care ward. But they sorted me out in terms of where things were at, and because of the brain injury, if anyone's done plant medicines or LSD, that was like my normal experience, you know? And I was multidimensional, and I had great difficulty staying in my body, and as a result of that, you know, I was very dysfunctional in the world, and I sort of more or less withdrew from society so many times. I went and lived in India and isolated parts around the world. And then on Easter Sunday 1998, I was retired on the beach in Varkala in South India, and I had this epiphany where I was sitting there, this beautiful restaurant, having beautiful food, the sun was setting, and I had this experience where a group of Europeans came up, and they were so obnoxious, they were so loud, and it was like a thunderclap. You know, I was in bliss, in heaven on earth, like in paradise. And all of a sudden these group of young people came up in the complete opposite experience, and my heart broke for them. And everywhere I went after that night, I couldn't shut out the fact that people weren't sharing the same experience with me. Right, so if I magnify that, like I was saying before, imagine if every single one of us was living heaven on earth, and somebody walked into the room and they were in a really compensated state. We would do everything we'd do to aid in the healing of that. And so, as time went on we're living out there in Vakala, I realised that I had to come back and share what it is that I'd been given. And so I have a very different perspective and approach as a result of not just a head injury, but spending an enormous amount of time with these masters that were completely multi-dimensional. They weren't Archangel Michael or anything like that. They were living beings that were supernatural, like Buddha-like beings, yeah? And anyway, so they taught me an enormous amount of things. I was multi-dimensional. I used to always go to this particular temple in the middle of the universe, and they would educate me. I was there literally like 24/7, all hours of the day and night, and they'd be teaching me things. And at the time, I was all about me. I was all about healing. And then, long story short, I nearly got shot by a soldier. And as I was about to die, my consciousness left my body. I went out through my left eye and went into his right eye, and I became him. And he was a Muslim guy, and he absolutely hated foreigners, Caucasians, and because he thought every white person was a Christian. And what happened was, as I went into an airport after it had closed, because I got to the domestic airport in what's now called Chennai, and they wouldn't let me go back into the bank, so they said go around the side door. So I burst through the side door, and this guy's standing there with a machine gun, right? And it was all sort of like high security stuff. And he swung around and he pointed this machine gun, and I thought, I'm dead, So my consciousness left in my body, became him, and I became him, and I felt the tension in his finger on the trigger. And he was looking for any excuse to kill me. And in the end, I felt the absolute hatred and the resentment towards me. And then with that, my consciousness spun inside of his consciousness, and I saw his whole life. I saw his wife and his children, the house, the street, everything, the suburb that he lived. And I felt the absolute love and devotion that he had for his family. He had been a soldier, he was training to become an accountant so he could actually have some more time with his family. It was spectacularly beautiful. And when I felt that love, my consciousness just exploded, and I went back out of his right eye, back into my left eye, and I smiled. And this guy is gruff, like he was a soldier, he was a killer. And I smiled and I said, bank. And he goes, and he just grunted. And when I realised, after I left the bank and went back to the domestic airport, I was thinking, this is not all just about me, it's actually about every single person on the planet wants to experience the same truth and the same purpose as to what I was seeking. This is I call it the common passion. Yeah. So that's where, because I was so tormented from all the injuries and the failures in my life, that was when I was 25, and then everything just turned around after that. I realised when I was on the beach in '98 that I did actually have to start sharing what I'd been sharing, and I'd been doing homeopathy and naturopathy, everything like that, but because I was dyslexic, I was all self-taught. So I didn't fit into the system at all, still don't. And so I was working in a homeopathic clinic in India as a naturopath. And I was treating people from all around the world. And I'd be treating like a menopausal woman from Morocco with breast cancer, or a Christian woman from London with breast cancer, or a Jewish woman from New York with breast cancer. But I'd have 10 different women from 10 different parts of the world, 10 different religions, 10 different situations. And I got very good at explaining what I called the spiritual psychology of healing to them. There was no point telling a woman in Morocco how to heal in a way that people would be able to get their products from Terra Madre. You have to treat them appropriately. Terra Madre is the health food shop, if you don't know, in Northcote. And so I got very good at explaining to them relative to their religions, relative to their situations, relative to their beliefs, even though they were different religions. So anyway, so the result of that was, when I was on the beach, I thought, okay, well, if I have to share this, I'm going to write a book. And I decided to write a book on what I call the spiritual psychology of healing, just for practitioners and for people who were consciously seeking to heal themselves. And so when I got back, travelled around the world again, got back to Australia, and I decided I was also going to study naturopathy to get formal qualifications. And 6 months into it, all my dyslexia, all the learning difficulties kicked in. This is 99. And I was also horrified the fact that all my lecturers were smoking and drinking and turning up stoned, and all my classmates were just pissed, and just like, this is coming from having been in a pure environment with supernatural beings. It's like literally all or nothing, to the extreme opposite. My herbal lecturer, she was supposed to be one of Australia's best, but she'd already had a partial mastectomy, and she'd still slip out the back and have a cigarette during the breaks. So where's the purity in all that? It's like it literally did my head in. And I was like, I can't do this. So I quit studying, and then word got out, and I started practicing again in Australia. And then what happened was 80% of my clients are doctors, practitioners, therapists, healers, psychologists. And as I was explaining to them what I was endeavouring to write about, I realised that they had no idea what I was talking about. They weren't working holistically at all. And I wasn't going to show you this, but I will now. I wrote a book. Actually, I'll share this first. So I've gone on to create a business which is called Spectrum. It's a bit hard to see with the glare. But there's 12 branches to what I do. And they all come together. They're central to everything that I've shared, everything that I've had. Everything that I've had the masters share with you, and everything I've experienced within my own reality as well. And I'll tell you now, I'm also interested in exploring everything to do with plant medicines, but from a completely different perspective, as you're probably about to realise. So I have a very different perspective of ayahuasca and things like that. So they're all connected, they're all central to, my website's called The Whole Spectrum. And the reason why it's called that is because relative to our sensory experience on Earth, most people are only seeing the slither of white visible light, right? And if we're psychic or something, we might be able to see either side of that. So when you look at the white light in relation to the whole electromagnetic spectrum, we're only seeing a slither of that, right? But if you see the whole electromagnetic spectrum of life in this world, the third density, that's only a small slither within the whole spectrum of consciousness, right? So when you go back to source in terms of consciousness, what we're experiencing within this world, within our consciousness, and then within consciousness condensing it down into the third dimensional reality, it's minuscule, right? So between all 12 branches of spectrum, I cover everything to do with consciousness itself. Right? I'm actually currently, just to give you an idea, I work in all these different fields. I'm working on a new theory of everything for physics, which incorporates the substrate of consciousness. So I can explain from the top down, which I'll explain shortly, exactly what the substrate of consciousness and how it all works. Where the superstring theory, E8 theory, all the current theories of quantum physics and everything all come together. And I'm also working on a new model for psychology because just what I've been going through the last 2 years with clients and everything, I've realised that the answer's still not there in terms of mental health. I deal with an extreme amount of mental health issues with people. I said to this lady one day, she said, "Oh, how are you going, Brian?" I said, "I've just been dealing with the usual mental health issues." And she said, "Yours or someone else's?" So everyone else's, all my clients. So I deal with a very high number of suicidal people. So I'm going to rewrite the book on psychology as well. That's too much for me to go into now, and it's not really relevant. But between all branches, we've got all bases covered. So what I did when I came back from India is I wrote a book. It's called The Nature of Life. And instead of being a 144-page booklet on the spiritual psychology of healing, it became a 600-page textbook which incorporates the whole model for life itself. And Kelly's identical twin sister, when she first did ayahuasca, she came back and she said, "I know what your book is now." And I said, "What is it?" And she said, "It's the entire map of consciousness condensed into a book, isn't it?" And I said, "Yes." Right? So every single thing that you can imagine is actually covered in the book. And that book is now only the first, well, it was supposed to be the first of a series of 21 books. It's now the middle book of 23. Because I was going to write about all the higher levels of consciousness, but that's not relevant to where humanity's at. So I'm going to reconfigure the books that were going to be the sequel to this book to be the prequel to this book. And that's what I'm now doing. So along the way, I've developed the model to incorporate every aspect of our life, every facet of our being and that sort of thing. So that the whole book is summarised in this chart. And it seems quite complicated, but it's very simple once you know how it works. So these are all the aspects which determines our experience. These are all the facets determines our expression. These are all the sectors of our shared experience and expression. This is what happens when it's in a negative spin. These are the 9 levels on which we experience and express ourselves, and if we're not connected to the truth, we live it as on 9 levels of ego. And then, I won't explain the rest, but then they all evolve. So this is the diagram for the aspects, this is a diagram for facets, and they all evolve or regress. And it's all in terms of a torus. Right? So we can see how each level of the torus arises from within the next. So there's all the laws, dynamics and processes of how that works, and that's what I explain in the book. So when you put the dodic angle, it's called a dodic angle, it's holographic, so you put the whole dodic angle in each side, within each aspect, and it keeps going on forever. So it shows you the true depth of what people are going through. So if you put the dodic angle on all the 9 levels of being, you end up with this diagram, and when you connect all the dots within that, there's 6.5 quadrillion pathways. And it sounds a lot, but once you understand the basic language of it, like if you know 1 to 10, you can use every number infinitely from there, right? So these are the core components. So once you understand the core components here, you can map all 6.5 quadrillion pathways within a person's experience and consciousness. And these are simply the factors that feed into that. Yeah? So it's actually very simple. And so when you actually see how that all pans out, all the details are in this book, this chart, and this is where you're either having a conscious experience. This is actually going into detail. So here you have, say, oneness, bliss and immortality, and it comes up here, oneness, bliss and immortality. So it maps the entire experience. At one time I took a mega dose of magic mushrooms, and the magic mushrooms had so much fun showing me how this worked. It was like a ladder. So I went dum 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 all the way through. Right? So I got shown how the exact nature of it all. So then if you want to go into further detail, you can just go into this chart, and here again you've got the oneness, bliss and immortality, and how you evolve from love, light, life to oneness, bliss and immortality. In the absence of love there's pain, in the absence of light there's confusion, in the absence of life there's exhaustion. In compensation for the pain, there's the desire for satisfaction. In the absence of, when you're stuck in confusion, you seek to be have more knowledge. And instead, when you're stuck in exhaustion, you tend to drive, people get driven to move on. Yeah. So that sort of maps the whole thing. Yes.
Are these models in your book?
Yes.
They are.
That's all the book. That's a summary of the book. That's the core components. That's it in detail relative to its opposites, and that's the detail even further into it. Yeah? So, that's all in the book. So that explains the depth and the extent of the model that I've created. So when I create that model, when I created it, I can then apply it to all existing modalities, whether it's Ho'oponopono, homeopathy, Myopractic. I studied Myopractic, which is an advanced form of Bowen therapy, and then I developed a system of kinesiology called Universal Kinetics, where that book is actually the manual for it. So when I'm working with kinesiology, I can pinpoint the exact pathway that a person's requiring to be addressed. Right. So one of the masters I spent time with, I'm still very hot here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I might just put it on 18 for a bit.
Yeah, of course.
So one of the masters I spent time with, they were all very brutally honest, right? They were all like, you want the truth, bang, there it is on the chin, right? Whereas now I'm actually adopting more of a non-violent communication approach, which is all soft, warm and fuzzy, you know. So it's like people like Sadhguru, they're actually making fun of the fact that they actually have to be nice to people, you know. Now they actually say we have to be pleasant because, you know, people today get so easily offended. So one of the masters I spent time with, he got up me for being specific and not exact. Right? Every hair on your head, every skin or cell on your body has an exact frequency and vibration. So he said when you use your divine intelligence, you can be exact with everything. And this is where some people, if they're not out of that dualistic state, they think what I'm sharing is intellectual or complicating things, but it's actually not. You're using your intelligence to define the exact detail within the divine form, and you can develop a conscious awareness around it, not just an intellectual understanding of it. Right, so when you apply that model to universal Ho'oponopono, that's what I'm about to share with you. Right, so you can go into exact detail if and when needed. This is not to replace Ho'oponopono. The simplicity of that's perfect, right? But I'll show you how and when it's appropriate to address it from the way that I'm going to share it, right? So what I've done is, it's a bit like what Bruce Lee did with martial arts. He took every style of martial arts and put it together into a system, right? If you're trained in a French way of fighting, there's no point trying to use that against a Russian style fighter, right? Or a Thai fighter, right? Every style, the law is everything's appropriate when it's appropriate. Right, so I've put together all the healing modalities, all the arts, all the sciences, all the philosophies, all the religions into that information. So the material is all encompassing, all embracing and all inclusive. And I've shared this, like I said, for 35 years with thousands of people all around the world, and not one person's ever disagreed with anything I've said. Because I've gone back to that common truth, that common passion, yeah? So that everybody, whether it's a Jewish bus driver in New York, or whether it's a Hindu rickshaw driver in India, or a Christian taxi driver in London, they've all gone, what you're saying is true. I agree. Yeah. So what we're trying to do through this is getting everybody on the same page in a very conscious and deliberate manner, so we can move forward. Yeah. And just put aside all the conflict and confusion. So with the model, if you know the Mandelbrot set, it's a mathematical formula for, it's a mathematical model for infinity. This is a video, but it's not working at the moment. You can pick any spot on the chart on the screen, and when you zoom in, you end up with the same image. If you've seen this before, right? I'll show you the 3D version of it. But what it does is it represents the infinite, the eternal, right? So when I'll show you the 3D version of it. I've just been having issues with this is an Apple program hijacking my PC, so it's not exactly cooperating at the moment.
There it goes.
Have you got that yellow lights thing on? You know how that
Oh yeah,
better
I
with
probably
that
do.
yellow light thing?
Yeah. Sorry, I'll just turn it off. Is that better?
Yeah.
So you can pick any spot. This is the 3D version of it. So you can pick any spot, and it literally goes on forever. So you can zoom in, or you can zoom out. Right? So if you have to zoom into an exact detail, you can zoom into an exact subatomic particle within the cells of a liver, or you can tune into the exact cell of a neuron within the brain. Right? This is if and when you need to. Right? So if you zoom, that's zooming in, but you can also zoom out. Yeah. So it's all mathematical, and I'm not going to get too complicated with it, but the language of the universe is mathematics, right? So when you apply it to a broccoli sprout, you can see the whole pattern and configuration of it all, right? So there's a perfection within it all. Any deviation away from this purity and perfection results in disease, right? Either individually or collectively, either within yourself or between you and another person or a group of people, which is where the whole Ho'oponopono comes into it. This is all free information. I'm going to put all this out on, for free. I'm going to write a proper booklet on it all. There's a blog called Universal Ho'oponopono on my website That's just the start of where I'm going to go with it. But I appreciate that not everybody's going to agree with me on this. And like what I've also developed in the last few months is a system called the Universal Method, which brings together the work of Byron Katie, Brandon Bayes, John F. D. Martini, Tony Robbins, NLP, every single, the Sedona method. What other ones are there, Kelly? Anyway, there's a whole number of them put together, and like if you actually look at the order in which they work, there's one of the things within the universe, there's an exact order in which things have to happen, right? So I put them all in, Ho'oponopono is one of them. So you put them all in the order, when you actually realise that they are actually in a sequence. There's 18 stages of healing, and you can see how each healing technique actually comes in at an appropriate stage. So one lady said to me when I was in Adelaide recently, she said, "I don't like what you've done with Byron Katie's work." I said, "Okay." And she said, "Yes, I've been doing Byron Katie's work for like however many years." And I said, "Oh, that's good. It's really good. So you've been, getting a lot out of it?" And she said, "Yes, it's been fantastic." And I said, "Can I ask you one question?" And she said, "Yes." I said, "Are you at peace, yes or no?" And she said, "No." And I said, "That's my point. What I'm doing is to actually help people do whatever techniques are required to get them to a state of peace." So if I said to you, "Are you at peace, yes or no?" Right? So I'm not dismissing what people are doing is working, but would you all agree that our natural state is to be at peace? And we all have a potential to experience and express that individually and collectively. Right, so what we're doing is we're starting from the truth that is our natural state, and we're consciously bringing that into whatever we practice, whatever technique we use. So I used to do Tai Chi and teach it, and people would say to me, "I'd love to learn Tai Chi," and I said, "Well, why would you want to learn Tai Chi?" And they say, "Oh, just so I can learn to be relaxed and be at peace." I said, "Well, the Taoist philosophy is first be at peace, and then do what you need to do as an expression of that, right? In Hindu philosophy, it's first be, then do, and then, if necessary, when asked, tell others, right? So everyone's telling everyone what to do without being at peace first. So what we're doing is with the Ho'oponopono and all the Universal Method is we're honouring the fact that we need to be at peace, and then radiate that out to the world as a pure expression of our natural state. Right, we can do all the techniques in an effort to get to that peace, right? The Universal Method helps people return to their natural state and deepen their natural state and then give expression to their natural state. Yeah? So the idea is we have to be able to work with a top-down and bottom-up perspective. Because we're living beings, we're like a tree. We need to have nature, nurture, nourish from the top down as well as the bottom up. Every single water particle that a root draws up is just as important as a water particle that the leaves draw in when it rains. Yeah? So we have to honour the fact that there is a top-down, bottom-up experience within our consciousness. Right? So the top-down experience is where we're connecting to the love, and then the bottom-up is when we actually have to go to the food store and buy food. Right? So we have to honour that. They have to align and then connect, and then we can merge the two. Right? And that's when we have that experience, we're at peace. Right? We can also be at peace once we awaken to the fact that that's the process. We actually have to heal that. We can be at peace at any stage. Right? The idea is to bring it into the now. Right? So with the Universal Ho'oponopono, is that clear enough for everybody? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah, so okay, fine.
Okay. I might just push it back a little bit further.
Yeah.
That way it makes it bigger on the screen. Okay, is that okay?
Yeah, as long as you're not going to trip over the cord.
No, that's right.
Okay.
You may need to refocus.
Yeah. It's just a bit glary with the... Alright, so this is, for what it's worth, this is my perspective on it, right? Putting the top-down, bottom-up perspective on it. First of all, I'll explain it to you this way. You can do it on yourself, or you can do it, directed at somebody. Like, say for example, if I said to you, who's the person that you're having the most difficulty with in your life, right? And if you imagine that person standing before you, you have to become aware of your response or your reaction to that person when you think of them. And it's very subtle but very powerful. Right? The masters I spent time with, they said it's all very black and white, all or nothing. Yeah? So if I say to you snake, you might feel your energies contract. If I say landmine or explosion, you might feel your energies contract. But if I say butterfly, you might feel your energies expand. So what happens is if I say to you, think of your father, somebody's energies, if they've been raped by their fathers, their energies may instantly contract, right? Or if they've had an argument with their father recently, they might love their father, but they might freeze and they go, yeah, well, I've forgiven him, so then it expands, right? But if they've had an argument and they haven't forgiven him, their energies will contract. It'll freeze, no, I haven't forgiven that bastard yet, yeah? So it'll contract. So if you are doing this on yourself and you want to heal something, then if you think of the situation, if your energies contracts, you have to do it from the bottom up, right? If you think of somebody and your energies contracts, you then have to do it. From this perspective, you don't worry about doing it on anything or anyone else, like it might be your plant. You can do the whole Ho'oponopono on the plant. But first of all, if your energies contract, if it in any way resists anything, then you have to keep focusing on getting yourself to the point where you've got that equanimity where nothing phases you, right? This is in a sense there's some truth within everything, and this is what Scientologists are working towards. They call them clears, where your energies don't get phased by anything at all, yeah? So in that sense, there's an element of truth. So until you're clear, this is what we do in Universal Universal Method as well, is we endeavour to get people clear and connected before they do anything. Right? So the idea is, if you think of doing Ho'oponopono on your father, if your energies freezes, even if it freezes, you still have to do more work on yourself. Right? And to put it this way, I work a lot with drug addicts. If I say to a drug addict, can you give this drug up cold turkey, yes or no? If they go, well, if they have to think about it, that's no. Yeah? If I talk to a drug addict and say, can you give this drug up cold turkey, yes or no? And they go, yes, absolutely. If they don't miss a heartbeat, then you know they've connected to that strength, that purity. Right? If they go, well, even if they hesitate the slightest bit, that's no. This is like an NLP hypnosis thing. So it's all or nothing, right? It's got to be instant, right? The closer to the truth something is, the more instant it becomes. So in an instant of thinking about something, if your energy freezes or contracts, you've got work to do on yourself to actually develop that love to the point where it doesn't faze you, right? And then that expansion, that unconditional expansion will then be able to align and connect with somebody else who at some point might have pissed you off or upset you or hurt you. Yeah? Makes sense? Everyone clear on keeping up with me? Is this relevant to everyone so far? Yeah? So if you do feel yourself contracting, right, in regards to anything or anyone, you work on yourself to the point where you can do the top-down perspective, right? And if you can do the top-down perspective really quickly, like I said before with the mushrooms, it's like boom, 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 boom. You know, it's like saying the alphabet. Once you know it, you can say it really fast. So you can do this almost at the speed of thought, yeah? Right, so when you actually have that clarity, you can do the top down, and then if you have that clarity, then you can meet somebody who's, you know, been in a compromised state, and you can, like if I treat all the rapists, the murderers, and the pedophiles, right? If somebody comes to, like, you know, a guy recently said, you know, I'm a pedophile and I'm in trouble with the law, you know. If your energies even the slightest bit freeze or contract, you're not, in that sense, worthy of the role, if you look at it that sense, right? You can't imagine Archangel Michael appearing to somebody who's a pedophile and he goes, well, you know, I'm not really sure about, you know, it's unconditional, spontaneous love, you know. So the subtleties of that is very important. So when you're able to align and connect with the top down within yourself and feel the instant flow of it, right, that will give you the ability to address people in an unconditional way, even if they're the darkest demons. Like I used to do exorcisms in lower dimensions and all that sort of stuff. And you can approach the darkest demon, Satan himself, and not even flinch, yeah? And you just go, it's okay, and just do the love thing, yeah? So this is where it requires brutal honesty with yourself, and like the law is, the subtle things are the most powerful, right? So if you're aware of the subtleties of it, and if you go, oh, I just felt a slight contraction on that, go in and explore it, go into the details of it, yeah? Does that make sense? And then you do the whole Ho'oponopono, whether you do it just the standard way, so sing the prayer to that part of yourself, but then there's a part of where all this material is about being very conscious and deliberate of things, right? When you actually do zoom out and see everything for what it is, you can look back at it and go, oh yeah, it's this, you know. So if I said to somebody, you know, when was the first time you felt unworthy of a financial freedom? And it might have been not getting what Santa gave them as a toy, you know, when they were 4 years old. It sets a belief system. So you can go back into the language that I talk about is what, when, how, where, why, and who. When did it happen? Who was involved? That sort of thing. So when you do the Universal Ho'oponopono, this is what's on the website and what I'm going to put into the booklet, is it's going to explain the detail, right? But it's going to be a need-to-know basis as well. If you don't need to know, skip it, right? Like the universal method that I've developed, there's 24 steps. You don't need to go through all of them if you don't need to, right? One lady from Adelaide said to me, I got to the fifth step, and the whole thing just became so clear and obvious. It was like, oh my God, yeah. And again, if you're dealing with somebody like 80% of the women I treat have been sexually abused, right? And 60% of all the men I treat have been sexually abused. So it's an extreme situation. But if you're working with somebody through a trauma, how do you know they're actually truly free of it? They can actually laugh about it. And it's like what John said before. You said before with your shoulder, it's the best thing that ever happened. Right? You know a person's really free of an issue if they've been raped or their husband's been killed in a landmine explosion or something, and they can turn around and say, yes, that was the best thing that ever happened to me because it's brought me to this point here now. And now that I'm a conscious spiritual being, I'm able to love unconditionally. And even though that hurt and it pissed me off and all the rest of it at the time, I'm here now and I'm free and I'm liberated to be all that I am, and I can consciously serve others to be in that same state. Yeah? So that's what we're working towards. Yeah? Is being able to honour the fact that it's all divine grace. Yeah? So that's what the essence, that's the spirit in which Ho'oponopono is being done. But Ho'oponopono, in the way that Dr. Hugh Len's sharing it, is coming from that you are that grace. It's a top-down thing, right? But then not everybody's ready for that. And you may not be ready for it when it comes to dealing with issues around your mum or issues around finances or something, yeah? So this is where, if you need to, go into the detail of it, just do it from the bottom up, yeah? And if you're feeling the celebrative things, like what Sue was saying before, just the grace of it, celebrate, then you can do it from the top down, right? You can actually honour the experience that's what's coming through into a person in their top down experience, okay? So, I also have a different spin to it, where it's not just you doing the talking if you're doing it in relation to someone else or another part of yourself, right? So if you look at it in terms of consciousness, most people are just living in a dualistic state, and they're living as an adult form of their parent's child. And a lot of people are saying, you know, I've done a lot of work on myself and that sort of thing, and all they're trying to do is be the best version of their parent's child that they can be. They haven't broken outside of the energy signatures of their parents. So if they're still within the yin and yang of the dualities, they're trying to get to the extremes of the positivity. But they're still like a baby calf elephant, you know, they're still tethered, and they're still extending their range of influence within the world. They're not expanding their consciousness into all the different dimensions, right? So the idea is to untether them, so they're not actually, like, if you've got a person who's been working on themselves for 30 years, right, and they're still not at peace, right, that means that they've got the wrong perspective and approach to what they're doing, right? Because, you know, you've got a person who's stuck in duality, working on the dualistic form of their parent's child from whatever age. So they're still stuck in duality. It's not until they're actually able to connect with something like the Ho'oponopono that they do change their perspective and approach. And then they realise that sometimes what they're working on doesn't really matter, right? So I had a guy from Adelaide, and he'd been in this situation. And I said, so what issue do you have around that? And he says, well, I have to learn to forgive. And like within 2 minutes, he realised he doesn't need to forgive, he just needs to get on with it. Right? Why look back? Right? In that sense, you don't have to look back unless you need to. And one of the masters I spent time with, I used to zap around the universe with him, and the temple room in the middle of the universe where he used to share stuff with me. One time I arrived there and it was completely black. And these masters were absolutely hilarious, right? They were master comedians. And I'm still really hot here.
Yeah, I just turn it off, Brian.
Yeah, is it off as such?
I just push the bottom button.
Okay. All right. I might open up this window.
Yeah, open the window because it's getting sunny outside.
Yeah. Sorry.
Oh, that's all right.
That'll be
Doing
better.
lots of talking.
Yeah. So one time I arrived in this room and it was completely black. And I felt his presence beside me, and he took my right hand with his left hand and he took me to the back corner of the room and he opened the door. And outside the door was the entire universe and the source itself, the brilliant light. And he turned to me with this really cheeky smile and he said, "Did you see that?" And I turned and looked around the room like this, wondering what I was supposed to see. And I looked back at him and shrugged. And I knew it was a rhetorical question because they always do in your head in. And he said, "I didn't have to open the door to let the darkness out." Right? So with a top-down perspective, you don't have to worry about what the problem is. Right? He said most people are just like trying to scrub shadows off the wall. Right? So there's no point trying to scrub a shadow off the wall if the object that's blocking the light shouldn't be there. So this is when a lot of people say, I'm doing emotional healing. What's the point of doing emotional healing if it's due to heavy metal toxicities? You said you're a homeopath. Yeah? You understand if somebody's got a heavy metal toxicity like cadmium, they'll have a whole list of mental and emotional symptoms. Yeah? So what's the point of actually doing emotional clearings of Ho'oponopono on that? You can do Ho'oponopono on the person that is aware that the part of themselves that is aware that they are not the person. It's like what all the masters say, you're not the mind, you're not the body. You can affirm the truth rather than actually deal with the issues. Like if somebody comes to me with cancer or AIDS or eating disorders, I'm not the slightest bit interested in that. It sounds a bit arrogant, but why bother with what's there? You deal with what's missing, right? All disease is due to something missing. It's the love, light and life that's missing. So when you know how to actually turn the light on, right? If this room's all completely black, you wouldn't say to me, make the darkness go away. You would say, turn the light on. Yeah? So that's the intent of what we're doing with the universal Ho'oponopono is what's missing. And we're working through, like if you can't get to the light switch, that's when you do the bottom up stuff. And once you get to the light switch, then it's all top down grace from there. Right? But this is the reality is, like I work with people all day, every day. There's not a lot of people, as you can see. We're not talking to 1,000 people here today. Not everybody's ready for this experience of sitting in a circle and singing and feeling the grace, right? So in an effort to actually address people for where they're at, you can do this either with them in person or as an absent recipient, as like what Dr. Hugh Len does. Yeah. But if you're aware of being able to meet people for where they're at, it's instant results. It's like hitting the nail on the head. Right? It's a bit like what Damien did yesterday with the Adada meditation. He hit the point exactly where his consciousness is more or less stuck, or it's got to. Yeah. So this is where he'd benefit from doing the Ho'oponopono on that part of himself. Yeah. So when you look at it in terms of the divine play of consciousness, sorry, I'm a bit dehydrated, but have some tea. Thanks, Kelly. The divine play of consciousness is seated in duality, the yin and yang of it all. So you've got the male-female aspects of it all. And the essence of love can only be experienced when two forms come together. It's like it's the sound when it's clapping. This is like they say, what's the sound of one hand clapping, right? You can only experience love when two things come together, right? So you can do this on your child's self, right? So if you think about the child that you were when you were 3 years old, when you had this trauma, you can do it on yourself, right? So that's what I'm saying. If you do it on yourself to the point where you can do the top down almost instantly at the speed of thought, then nothing will faze you when you're dealing with somebody else's issues. Yeah. So when you're doing it on yourself, I've changed it to the point where, like what the master said, you have to do it exactly. It becomes a conversation between the two. So again, it's magnified. You can do it, yes, you can radiate it, and it will work. And everything that Hugh Ling's doing and everyone around the world is doing is evidence of that. But what I'm saying is to actually magnify it and to get down to the exactness of it, which is what when I showed you that dodic angle, it's all seated. You go into the actual depth of it, right? The whole Ho'oponopono as it is at the moment, it's extremely powerful, but if you consciously want to go into the depth of it and consciously connect with the laws, dynamics and processes that governs that facet of your life, then you can go into it with the bottom up, right? And it will actually really bring to the surface what's missing in your life, where the glitches have been in the system, right? So when you do it, this is the repent or apology part. You apologize by saying, I'm sorry, right? But because we want to magnify the experience, we also want to have, like the 3.5-year-old child version of myself, who's got a severe brain injury, getting there, getting my head stitched up without anaesthetic, right? I would say that to myself, I'm sorry, right? But then I would say that to the point where the 3.5-year-old child would say to myself, right, I accept your apology, right? Does that make sense? And then you say, please forgive me. And you would sing it or say it, and then eventually the part of that, whether it's part of yourself or the other person or the collective that you're saying it to, would say, I forgive you, right? This is all free on the net, so you don't have to write it down, yeah? And I'll also be, Jennie will email it out to everybody. And then they say, they receive the apology, then they apologise for their part, played it by saying, I'm sorry, right? That little 3.5-year-old boy that cracked his head knew damn well he shouldn't be running on wet concrete because he'd been told, right? But because he was so full of food additives from cordial and the effects of, all the lactose intolerance, I was hyperactive. And I remember running from the grass going, I probably shouldn't run onto the concrete, but what the hell? I was too amped up. So as my foot was slipping going, I was thinking, oh shit, I should have listened to myself. And then boom, then my head exploded, yeah? So this is where, it's like if I deal with a woman who's been raped, right? I say to her, look, if you're completely honest with me, you had an intuition not to go out that night, didn't you? And they said, yeah, I gave in to the pressure of my friends. But you really didn't want to go? No. You see what I mean? So you're revealing the fact that you're honouring the part of themselves that's all-knowing, all-present and all-powerful. Right? So from that part of themselves, you're getting them to honour the fact that they didn't listen to an intuition, or they were distinctly told not to do that, and then it happened. Right? So on that part, they apologise for not listening to the law dynamical process that was needed to be honoured, right? Then they say, I'm sorry, and then you accept the apology by saying, I accept your apology. Is this making sense so far? Yeah? And then you appeal for forgiveness. You are asked to forgive by them asking, can you please forgive me? And then you say, clemency, this is you forgive them them or yourself by saying, I forgive you. So it's actually like in psychology, it's called a transactional analysis, right? So you're actually honouring each other as divine beings at this stage. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Everyone knows transactional analysis. You've got adult, parent, child. Well, I've expanded that into positive, negative and divine, right? So you can have a negative child talking to a positive adult. But in this sense, we're doing it as divine beings. Does that make sense? So you're actually having that transaction. And by the transaction, it's actually magnifying the essence of Ho'oponopono. Does that make sense? So then you do retribution. So if this is towards somebody else, it's retribution. You repay, restore, return, renew, restate. So if I say to a woman who's been raped, what do you feel was taken away from you? What did that rob you of? right? And they'll tell me, it robbed me of my trust, it robbed me of my creativity, it robbed me of my confidence, right? So in this sense, you actually give back whatever they feel is missing. You imagine manifesting it in whatever form and giving it back to them, yeah? And then if it was something from yourself, say for example, a gambling addict, right? If they're wasting all their money at a casino, right, and they go broke, and then they actually come to the point where they want to address it. If they're doing this for themselves, what has wasting all that money and going broke and being homeless on the street, right? How would you redeem? So this is to yourself. How would you? What if you had all that? If you could recoup all of that energy, where would you be if that never happened? Right? If you were a divine being in that same time frame, where would you be? And you honour the fact that the divine is going to redeem you. You're going to redeem yourself. You're going to put yourself back. Like say for example, if you go off on a tangent and you go this way for 10 years, and if you had a state, it's like a sliding door scenario. If you're going off on a tangent, and this one had stayed true to your path, where would you have been if you stayed true to your path? Everything that you seemingly lost, everything that appears to have been lost. As you know, as a spiritual being, we're never tainted, right? We can't ever lose anything. It's just the appearance of that, right? So when you are in down and out homeless, there's a part of your soul that's going, I'm still here, I'm still whole, I'm still complete. It's just the mind and body that's actually gone astray. You're bringing it back into alignment with the person's true self. Does that make sense? So you're doing this for yourself, you're redeeming yourself to your higher divine self, or you're giving retribution and restoring the person who's been wronged. You're returning them to oneness and wholeness as well. Wholeness and completeness. Does that make sense?
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah?
Oops, sorry.
You had a boom moment?
Boom.
Now I'm getting goosebump moment. Yeah?
Wow.
So this is where the bottom-up approach stops. Right? So when that lady in Adelaide did the 5th stage, she got to the point where she was laughing hysterically at the whole situation. You don't need to, if you get to this point and you start laughing hysterically, you don't worry about doing the top-down version of it. Does that make sense? You don't need to do that process.
You're there.
You're there, right? Makes sense? So this is where, if you do plant medicines correctly, and I tell everybody, don't do plant medicines until you've read my book at least twice, right? Because you won't know how to navigate consciousness. And when you do plant medicines in the way that I share it, they reveal the absolute humour of it all. Absolutely hilarious. It's like it's the game of life, it's the play of consciousness, right? And if you're working through some sort of shit, right, you get to the point where it's so incredibly funny, you realise that it's a universal, a cosmic joke, and the joke's on you. You're taking it personally and seriously. You've missed the point somewhere, And this is where even in Hindu scriptures, in the Ramayana, the story of the Rama god, the god Rama, it's all centred around the war with Ravana, right? And at the end of the whole story, Ramana, the god, and Ravana, the devil, are sitting on the beach, having resolved all the things, and they're congratulating each other on how well they played the game. Yeah? Makes sense? So as spiritual beings, if you imagine that we're all, he's gone back to source, gone back to oneness, back to the void. Anyone been there? Right? If you go back, do you know what it is? It's excruciatingly lonely and boring as hell. Right? Yes, the potential for it's there, but there's no experience, there's no expression. That's why the divine goes, the divine separates itself in order to experience its essence. You can't have a clap unless there's two hands manifesting to be able to create it. So the formless essence is expressed through form, right? Does that make sense? So this is where the celebration of these two forms coming together, whether it's your child self or the person you were 2 hours ago, whatever, right? You're actually honouring the two forms within time and space coming together and going, things aren't as what they appear, and we can laugh at it. Make sense? If there's any glitch or any issues, So the top-down perspective, we're all one. Actually, I'll share this story with you as well. So imagine if we're all spiritual beings up in the heavens and we're all one and we get bored, right? And I say to you all, look, I'm bored. I'm going to go down to the next dimension and I'm going to induce a bit of amnesia and I'm going to go into a dark room and I'm going to see if I can find my way back, right? So, and the clock starts now. And I go into this room and I find my way out and I'll get back and you all go, hey, you found your way back, right? After a little while that gets too easy, right? Why don't we go down 2 layers of consciousness, 2 levels of consciousness, right? And we're going to amp it up. This time I'm blind, right? So, okay, find my way back. Oh yes, that's right. I'm remembering now, I actually am not this mind, I'm not this body, I'm not this density. Right? And then over time we go down to 10, 11, 12 dimensions. Right? So this is where, as you go down, the density and the amnesia increases. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But the essence of it is always there, right? And to put it to you another way, right? Who here's done a jigsaw puzzle?
Yeah.
Right? So if I'm an alien, I've just arrived, and I'm saying, excuse me human folk, I'm a little bit confused. What's this story with jigsaw puzzles? Right? Why would you do a jigsaw puzzle? Sita?
Because it's challenging.
But why is it challenging? How is it challenging when the answer's on the cover of the box?
Putting all the pieces together.
Yeah,
But why would you do that? Why would you waste time? Why would you actually put the
Figuring it
pieces
out for
together?
yourself.
because all the pieces are all churned up. They're not all
Okay.
lying out like the picture, are they?
Yeah.
They're
But how and why would that be challenging when you actually seem to bring it on yourself, where the more pieces and the more complicated the picture is, the more you seem to enjoy it? I don't understand. Right? When you've got a complicated picture here and the answer's actually on the cover of the box,
yeah.
why would you spend the time when something equally complicated or complex is right out your window? Why would you not just look out the window?
Procrastination.
Procrastination. Yeah. You see what I mean? So the answer is, the reason why we want to do the jigsaw puzzle is because it's fun putting the pieces back together, right? But so if somebody's doing a jigsaw puzzle and having a dummy spit, they're going, oh, for fuck's sakes, where's this part? You wouldn't say to them, persevere, hang in there, you can do this, right? If it's not fun, don't do it. Make sense?
Yeah.
You would say, look, don't worry about it, just go and have some fun. Right? And you wouldn't, the way the puzzle unfolds is you're not going to sit there and go, God damn it, I'm going to stay here until I find this piece. And it's like, it's the last piece, you can't find it, right? And then you end up going, as you're looking for one piece, and you're going, no, bugger it, I'm going to find this one piece before I go and make myself a cup of tea, right? And as you're looking for it, you go, oh, there's that piece that goes there. And oh, there's that piece, you go there. But you still can't find the one piece that you want before you go and have a cup of tea. You have a cup of tea and you're sitting there going, still can't find the piece, and you go, oh, there's the thing right there. Right? Makes sense? This is how the puzzle and the game's unfolding. But when we actually forget the nature of our spirit, the oneness, bliss and immortality, right, we have to do the bottom-up approach. Does that make sense? To help us reconnect with the fun factor. Does that make sense? So having done that from the bottom up, we can go, okay, let's bring all that oneness, bliss and immortality down into the human form, and even though I've got spinal injuries and it's hard for me to stand up straight, I can still bring the fullness of that essence into the here and now and share it with you folks. Yeah? So we can all remember who we really are and why we're here, and then go out there and share it with all beings in all worlds. Right? Another little quick story I'll share with you. How are we going for time? It's 12:10, is it?
Yeah.
What time did you want to finish up?
10
10 minutes ago?
it's okay. How is
Alright.
everyone?
I'll just share this story with you. One time this master, the being that appeared in the car and saved my life, he turned up at my clinic one day and he said to me, Brian, what are you doing? And I said, I'm serving humanity, Swami. And he looked at me and he said, this is the one that got up me for being specific and not exact. He said, exactly what are you doing? I said, I'm helping the masses to return to their natural state in a conscious and deliberate manner. And he looked at me all disappointed and disgusted, and he went, he said, your intentions don't carry enough weight. I go, oh, okay. And he goes, you must emphatically imply that every last man, woman and child on the planet, with no exceptions, no exclusions, and every living form in every world of every dimension experiences and expresses its nature. That must be your intent. He said your intentions are only planetary, not universal. Okay? So he said, like I'm a martial artist, he said, well, if you try to hit something, you just don't stop at the obstacle. The idea is to go through it. Right? So the idea that if we're dealing with a problem, we're going to the other side of the problem, we're going to work back to it and then see if it's worthy of a comment. Right? I spent time with two of Ramana Maharshi's disciples, and obviously they're silent, yeah. Well, one of them wasn't, one of them was. And when you connect to that true silence, when you're coming from the top down, it goes without saying. And when you're dealing with the bottom up stuff, it's actually not worthy of a comment. So either way, you're left in silence. Does that make sense? So if you're dealing with bottom up stuff, you don't actually have to give it time and energy to scrub the shadow off the wall. You can go, okay, I acknowledge that. Let's work at it from the light perspective. Does that make sense? So if a person can't see the light, or if this room's really dark and I turn the light on, it's all a bit too bright. If it's a bit too harsh for them, just do it gently from the bottom up first. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Where's the fun in if you're in a dark room and someone turns on a really bright light? That's not fun. Right? So it's the same for a consciousness. It's the same for an ego to go, oh, that's a bit bright for me. Yeah. Just you don't have to rush it. Yeah? We don't have to be like dogs pulling on the lead here. Right? So with that in mind, knowing that we're not here to address the problem, we're just here to bring in the pure essence of it and give the unique expression to it in an individual experience. Every single person here has unique gifts, talents and skills. There's never been another Jennie Divine anywhere in the universe. Right? If you know Dr. Joe Mashala's work, he's introduced the term the law of repeatlessness. Everything in the universe never repeats itself. Right? So this is why if you're dealing with something and you're trying to redo it, you're wasting your time. It has to be unique. Right? You're on the leading edge of consciousness, expanding into the new and the unknown. Right? Past is past, it's done. Right? What potential lies ahead? Yeah? So from the top down, you go, your consciousness is merged. Right? If I've got you to all close your eyes and merge with Source, some of you may or may not be able to do that. Right? So if you merge with Source, right, you're saying this to your soul or somebody else, I celebrate your or my emergence. And then you're working your way down, ascension. I affirm your or their transcendence, right? So I celebrate, you're going beyond time and space. Actually, that should be ascension there, sorry. Affirm their transcendence, which is going beyond duality. And then honour, acknowledge the infinite, the eternal perfection within the being, form of the self or the all. So this is where you're doing this towards yourself, you're doing it towards others or collectives or the all. Right? So you can do this radiating out to all beings in all worlds and all universes, or you can do it to the Muslim community or the gay community or the people who've got cancer or an individual child. It doesn't matter. It's all the same concentration of this energy. Yeah. So then you honour them, right? So the Adada meditation I share is called Adada, is a Sanskrit word for honour. So you're honouring the whole play of consciousness, the whole level of evolution of consciousness, the whole game of life, the whole puzzle of life, the whole meaning and purpose of life. So you're honouring that, you're bringing that feeling through. So when you look at the material, the next level is to bring the grace, purity and liberation in, which is the sense of the unlimited ability to manifest, right? So if you're a supernatural being in nirvana, what would you spontaneously create? So this is the manifestational power, you know. If you're in nirvana, you can materialize anything. You can make a perfect cello, or you can make a perfect canvas or art piece, yeah? So then you've got love, light, life. This is the sharing of love, light, life. This is the sense of being or the form. So this is, again, you could be doing this on a rock, yeah? Reciprocating the essence. So this is the sharing of the essence. So you've got a rock just singing to you, right? I nearly got killed on a mountain. I do mountaineering in New Zealand, and I nearly got killed in 2005, and I went back there a couple of years later to make peace with the mountain. And it's funny because the night before I climbed the mountain, and I nearly died, the spirit of the mountain, this Mount Egmont, Taranaki, it nearly killed me. It came to me and said, it's not necessary that you climb me. And it didn't say not to do it. It just said it's not necessary. But I thought, okay, well the weather's still not good, but I'm still going to do it. And then the weather turned bad, got hypothermia, all that sort of stuff. Spent 6 weeks recovering, right? So this is where you can do it. So when I went back and did it, as I came down from the alpine and got to the tree line, all the trees sang to me the whole way back to the car. They just, it was like a chorus. It was just like this most spectacular harmony, yeah? If you know Wade Davis, he works for National Geographic, he's an anthropologist. He spent time with all the shamans, and they said to him, he asked, how do you know what plants to mix in your medicines to make ayahuasca? And they looked at him and said, well, we use this species and we use that species. He said, what do you mean? Is there different species? And they said, well, yeah. And they said, well, he said, how do you know there's a different species of the different plants? And they all sing a different note on the full moon. It's like, duh, don't you know that? They actually said to him, we thought you knew plants. But he didn't know they sing a different note on the full moon. And so he felt like he was a complete fool. Right? So this is what the plants are telling them how to combine the synergies of their medicines. Make sense?
Yeah.
So this is what we're missing out on when we're watching Sesame Street and Neighbours. Right? We're not actually expanding our consciousness into that natural state. Yeah. So this is the reciprocation of that love, light, and life. The fact that we're here now, we can have so much fun. Yeah. So the nature, nurture, nourish. A lot of people talk about in psychology that nature will nurture, but there's also nourishment. You can have the perfect natural environment and nurturing, but if the child's got a vitamin C deficiency, its immune system's going to be collapsing. It doesn't matter how much love you give it, it's not going to develop a sense of self. You know, all the metaphysics of all the immune system and the different systems of the body kick in. So you need nature, nurture, nourish. That's to draw nature's elements, and nurture the soul and nourish with food, and that's to sense the synergy within the above, enabling love, light and life to manifest. So you need nature, nurture, nourish to actually embody it, not just to have it as a theory or philosophy, but to actually consciously embody it. Right? So this is where whatever you need to be nature, nurture, nourished, fully to actually feel it. So this is why I say that, like I talk to a lot of professionals and very highly educated people. I say, look, in all honesty, I fully understand and accept that you know and understand what I'm going to say. But what I'm talking about is to bring it into conscious awareness, the exact law dynamical processes of what's required for each person, and then act on it deliberately so you get more or less instant results. Yeah? Does that make sense? So, having done that, you praise the person, right? So, acknowledge all passions, gifts, talents and skills being shared and experienced. So, we can all celebrate Sue with her art. We can all go, we praise you, we thank you for bringing the beauty of what's within you and manifesting it into the world and sharing it. Yeah? See what I mean? Make sense? So then, the next one down is gratefulness. You appreciate all the experiences and expressions in the past, present and future. So I celebrate all the contributions you make. So everything you've done in the past, I honour everything that you've gone through in the past, everything you're going through. And this is another important part. When you're doing it consciously, and there's two questions I'm going to ask you. Do you feel or do you believe it's inevitable that you're going to fulfil your true potential and purpose within this lifetime, yes or no?
Yes.
Is it absolutely certain? Do you feel it's inevitable?
No.
Not yet? So you need to do the bottom-up stuff, right? So when you feel that it is, which part of you is answering that question? It's a very direct answer, yes or no. Do you feel it's inevitable that you're going to not just experience your potential and purpose, but the ultimate potential and purpose?
The all-knowing, all-wise part of you.
Exactly. So that's the part of you that you're honouring that's where you're coming from when you're addressing any issue in life. Yeah? It's just a temporary phase. It's a passing cloud, right? So if somebody doesn't do that, that's when they can do the bottom-up stuff. Which part of you is feeling not worthy, not deserving, not having the right or the permission? Which is like when Damien did that in a meditation last night, he hit the point of solitude, right? And he didn't feel worthy of being all that he is. You know, there's worthiness, deservedness, not having the right or permission. You can go back and do the whole Ponopono. When did you first feel that? Yeah? You can go into the exact detail of it.
Isn't that different though? The way I heard your question,
yeah,
perhaps was different because
Yeah.
I was thinking we've got lots of lifetimes,
This lifetime.
and
This
so
lifetime.
there's just a little piece in this lifetime.
But this is where I have what I call the conditions of unconditional sharing. Do you like that term? Conditions of unconditional sharing. If we're going to unconditionally share with each other, we can only bring into our shared experience what's directly perceivable within us, right? If I start talking about the masters in any detail, that's dishonouring you because they're not here to speak for themselves. I'm sharing with you my interpretation of the years and decades I've spent with them, yeah? So that's where Buddha himself said within 1500 years of my passing, the essence of my teachings would be lost, right? The essence of his teachings is be at peace and then live your life, yeah? Do whatever it takes to find that peace, yeah? And then be. First be, then do, then tell, right? So this is where the answer is, the question is, the exact question is, do you feel or do you believe it's inevitable that you will fulfill your ultimate potential and purpose within this lifetime, yes or no? Yeah? Some people feel it, some people don't. Yes? So the
We
next...
don't have to die anymore to feel that bliss and peace.
Exactly.
We can do it living.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand now. You have to be in that state before you can get there.
Yeah.
You've got to have the joy.
Yeah, this is not a belief. This is not, yes, it would be nice to think that, or it would be nice to believe that.
Yeah.
You either feel it or you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah? This is being honest with yourself, right? So the next question is, to take it up a step, right? This is the nature of consciousness. That's not mine, is it? Oh, it is. How is that possible?
Something important.
It's the masters calling you.
Possibly. Time to get on with it. So the next question is, and you already know that I'm a bit of a weird character already, but right, it sounds like I'm off my meds half the time. But
We have weird and Warburton very.
Oh, don't worry, we're all
Alright,
mixed
that's
bag.
So when the twins and I, or Joy comes with us, we go up into the hinterland of the Gold Coast and I talk to all the Aboriginal spirits, right? And they gave me this question because a lot of people want to work with me and help me and everything like that, but there's conditions, right? So the condition is they have to be able to answer this question. Do you feel or do you believe it's inevitable that every last man, woman and child on the planet is going to experience their ultimate potential and purpose within your lifetime? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah? Within your lifetime we can all merge consciously together into the nature of our spirit, nature of the divine, yeah?
Yes.
Is it inevitable? And essentially, you can't work with anybody unless it's an absolute yes. You see what I mean? Because if they're not feeling it, you know, like they Africans, you know, Americans, if you're not feeling it, dude, you know, if you're not feeling it, you're not there yet. It makes sense? You got to go away.
If you don't think it's possible, it'll never be possible, is what you're saying, isn't it? If you don't think it's possible, then it would not
if
be
you've got
possible.
any doubts about it, yeah, this is what I was going to say, right? In terms of consciousness, it's called, in physics, it's called the Banach-Tarski effect, right? In every moment, you've got infinite possibilities. And within that, anything that can exist within consciousness does exist. Anything that can happen does happen, right? So you've got infinite possibilities in every moment. So what you're doing consciously is because you've got the top-down experience, you're bringing it into awareness through the breath and the heartbeat, which is what I'm sharing with the Adata meditation. So each breath and each heartbeat is you're incrementally going down the timeline where you're going to experience and express the ultimate, right? And everybody else, despite appearances, even the asshole who's got road rage cutting you off and everything, despite appearances, everybody else wakes up, and by the time your life's over, you're going to have the opportunity to share it with everybody on the earth. Right? But I'm also on the timeline where I get to experience with not just the people on the planet, but on a universal level. You get where I'm coming from?
Yeah.
That's why it's called Universal Ho'oponopono. So within your lifetime, you can filter out everything that appears real, but it's not. You go back to the absolute core of your being, find the truth within everybody, and go, despite appearances, every being in the universe that ever has existed, that is existing and will exist, we're all going to wake up within the simultaneousness of space, simultaneousness of time, and the superimposed nature of space. We're all going to go, we're all done. Yeah? That makes sense?
Yeah.
That's the essence of universal Ho'oponopono. Yeah? So we can't leave, we're not excluding any grain of sand, any piece of cosmic dust, any Alpha Draconian. We're not excluding anybody. It's all going to awaken back to its nature. So every form, and we got this big room where we all started from, we're all going to cross the doorway together and go, that was a blast. Yeah? And as Sadhguru says, we've already all done that 84 times together. Right? Makes sense? So, that's what I'm offering. Top down, bottom up approach. Yeah? That's how I've had this, this is the truth filtering down into the Ho'oponopono approach. Is that relevant to everybody? Yeah. Does it resonate with everybody?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, very good. Any questions or comments?
So it's actually focusing on potential, pure potential, rather than what's wrong.
Yeah.
And we've got to fix something.
Yeah.
It's actually approaching from a totally different.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is your left shoulder okay?
Yeah, it's good.
Do you want to stand up here for a sec? Yeah. And I won't demonstrate with your right shoulder. If you stand around and face everybody,
Yep.
I'm going to show you, this is a law, right? Everything in nature, there's laws, dynamics and processes. If you stand with your feet together,
Yep.
right, just hold this arm out
Yeah.
and hold strong. So it's strong, right? Without straining, what I want you to do is push up hard against me, as hard as you can.
Okay.
Hold strong.
Oh. Yeah.
What just happened?
I switched off.
No.
No.
Hold strong. This is normal. Yeah. Now push up hard against me.
I'm trying too hard.
Nope. So what I'm showing you here is the physiological, neurological, biochemical basis of resist not evil. Right? So what you resist persists. Right? If you ignore me,
Yeah.
if you ignore me, you're strong. You can hold that for ages. Yeah?
Yeah.
As soon as you resist, right, you fall into the energy that you're resisting.
Yeah.
Makes sense? So
Yeah.
as soon as you're off balance, if you're resisting the loggers or resisting some political agenda, right, they're actually doing this purposely to distract you off your path.
Yeah.
Right? So if I say, okay, I'm going to attack John, I'm going to get him where it hurts the most. And he's going to go, no, I don't want you to do that. And as soon as he resists, I can grab hold of him, I can take him anywhere I want him to.
Yeah.
Yeah? But if you hold your arm there, feet together, right, if you've got somebody pressuring you from this side, somebody pressuring you from that side, what do you do? Other than ignore them, what can you do?
I don't know. That's it. Yeah.
Walk away.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense?
Yeah.
Why waste your time and energy resisting something? Your potential is here and ultimate potential's there. You've got the worthiness, deservedness, right, permission to ignore anything that's not true, just walk away.
Mm.
And it's designed, the whole system's rigged, as George Carlin says, it's all done deliberately, folks, if you know that comedian. Right? It's done deliberately to distract you away from what's essential. Right? Yes, it's important that there's trees, and yes, it's important that we save the whales, but the only way we're going to do that is if we're all awakened to a point where we actually address the issue from the top down.
Mm.
Make sense?
Very much so.
Right.
Yeah.
So welcome to my world. Yeah? So this is where a lot of people don't like what I'm about to say, but what a lot of the activists and everybody's doing is literally a complete waste of time. Right? If you look at what Mother Teresa's doing, we could have 1 million Mother Teresas. Is that actually going to stop the problem from occurring? No. We can have millions of people working towards saving whales, stopping child trafficking, stopping the land clearing, right? But if I don't donate or support any of those charities or activists or anything like that. Why? Because they're all hierarchies, they're all wolf in sheep's clothing, designed to distract you away from what's essential, which is here, right? So if I got together everybody from the Sea Shepherd, World Wildlife Fund, if I got them all together and said, what's the cause of your problem? Well, it's bad government policy. What's the cause of your government? Bad government policy, right? It's all the same problem. So as Henry Thoreau says, right, for every 1,000 people hacking at the branches, there's only one striking at the root. What's the point of spending all this time and energy hacking at the branches? Yes, we've stopped clearing the Indonesian rainforest and we're saving the orangutans. Meanwhile, there goes a chemtrail overhead. What's the point? Right? The quality of our life is collapsing because we're giving energy to all the things rather than focusing on what's essential. If we all got together in the spirit of Ho'oponopono, we would root out the common cause of all our problems within 2 weeks. And we would save all that time and energy, we would save all that protesting and coordinating things and writing petitions and everything like that. Does that make sense? It's a complete waste of time.
Yeah, it does make sense.
Yeah,
'Cause
well,
the
it's-
world's gone through.
But
Sorry, Gaia's already through into the fifth dimension. It's all the collective thoughts of the world that is keeping us here.
That's right.
And so that's why I've got my new t-shirt, do it for Gaia, if you can't do it for yourself. Do you know what I mean? But to really see, you just
Are
got
they on your
vision.
website or anything?
Pardon?
You're selling those on your website?
No, I shouldn't
You
I?
should,
But it
yes.
says, yes.
We all vote that you do that. Yeah?
Focus, okay, I'll get that. Focus on the magic and focus on the beauty, and if that's the new earth, and if more
Exactly.
people do that, if everyone went into their hearts in all the world would be fine. You know,
Exactly.
it's all about us.
So this is where, if we're dealing with worldly problems at the same level that's created it, like Einstein said, we'll never create change, right?
No.
Makes sense?
it's like I don't give to cancer research and all those things. The more you push against it, the more you get all
I
that.
can tell you 300 cures for cancer off the top of my head. What's the point of even, it's not worthy of, see, this is where people want to say, I probably know more about the Illuminati conspiracies than anybody else, right? Because I've researched and inverted every single avenue of control and influence they've created, right? But you don't need to go down that path when you've got this.
No.
Yeah? So this is where, look, if somebody wants to start crapping on about politicians and say, or the pharmaceutical industry, in all honesty and in honour, no disrespect, but it's not worthy of a comment.
No.
And they want you to waste your time and energy talking about shit that doesn't matter.
Because it won't change anything.
Yeah.
It only makes it worse. It just gets worse.
So
And
there's,
it's changed all anger,
there's
right?
generations
Yes.
of people complaining about the same thing, whereas if we all had enough clarity, having gone through this process, that we could all sit in a circle and say, how are we going to strike the root? Yeah, that makes sense. So that's the essence of what Spectrum is doing, is getting everybody to come together in each of the branches and with a commonality of striking the root. Yeah? Makes sense?
Yes.
Good.
It's really very simple.
It is. Everybody says life's meant to be simple. So some people say, life's not meant to be easy. Yeah, I agree, that's true. It's meant to be effortless. Right? So this is where, one last thing I'll share with you, is if you understand and accept that it is inevitable and the ultimate's unfolding, and if you unconditionally awaken to the nature of this, either surrender or awaken to the nature of this, right, your journey between now and then must be effortless. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You don't have to think, you just feel your way forwards in each moment. One master, the one that shook his finger at me all the time, he said, your efforts to maintain the effortlessness.
I like that one. Yeah.
If it's not effortless, sit down, shut up and be quiet until it is. If you're not doing it with a smile on your face, in a spirit of just celebration, then you're just contributing to the problem. You're going to be resisting something. This is the essence of what Wim Hof's sharing with the cold. Don't resist the cold, embrace it. That's what I'm saying. The model I'm sharing, it's all embracing, all encompassing and all inclusive on a universal, multi-dimensional scale. Right? Because everything is us in another form. If I say to people, which finger's more me? Right? It's just every form in the universe is me in another form. I can see, I'm not just believing that, but I feel it. Yeah? So from that perspective, I just do the whole Ho'oponopono from down. Yeah? Makes sense? So this is where, if you're working with somebody, you don't actually have to start with what you have to offer. You ask them what's happening, what's the most, if I said to each of you, what's the biggest issue you're facing in your life? I don't have to intellectualize it I just ask. It's asking the right questions. Yeah? Makes sense? And they say, okay, well, and then, like what happens with the universal method is, okay, what's the most important issue that you're dealing with? What's the biggest problem you're dealing with? See, when you're dealing with the bottom up, there's problems. From the top down, it's the challenge of it. The challenge of the jigsaw puzzle. Can I find this piece without getting pissed off and angry? Make sense? Yeah?
Yeah.
So the challenge is to deal with everyone else's problems. Yeah? My brother's, I've got 15 nieces and nephews. My brother loves that movie Madagascar, and the last line of it is, just smile and weave, boys. Yeah? So just let those people who are getting fired up and resisting and angry about stuff, just smile and wave. Let's just focus on those people who are smart enough to not resist and channel their energy towards the whole Ho'oponopono essence. Yeah? Does that make sense?
Yes.
So like I said to you earlier, there's no other way of doing this. Right? There's no bottom-up approach. So this is where, again, that's very confronting when I say to people, there are no solutions to humanity's problems. None at all. Do you know why? Because all the problems occur the fact that we're going away from nature. Right? The answer is do the opposite to what we're doing. We don't actually, if we keep finding solutions to each problem, we're just going to keep going in the direction we're going. Right? Most people are helping each other and supporting each other in going the wrong way. You know, if someone hits the wall, they hit the wall because they're going the wrong direction. Right? We're actually meant to be intervening in a way that's conscious and say, look, if we're not doing something according to a pure, simple, natural, holistic lifestyle, which is here and now, then we're not honouring each other and living the truth. We're just helping people. Like I say, we're not here to help each other with our problems. We're here to serve each other and living the truth. Is it true that we need to go protesting? No. Is it true that we need to get our shit together to the point where we're in a state of bliss and we find creative answers? Right? It's like what Buckminster Fuller said. We create a new paradigm that makes the old one obsolete. That's what we're doing. Yeah? Make sense? So we're not in any way resisting. It's not even worthy of a comment what everyone's doing. We're consciously and deliberately coming together in the spirit of this and we're getting on with it. Yeah? You all with me?
Yay!
Welcome to my world. Right? So now I'm enlisting you. Right? Gaia, universe, divines, you're enlisted. Yeah? So honour yourself for where you're at. If you have issues, work with somebody who's, there's a saying, travel with thine equals or thine betters. Right? Find somebody, the best person you know, to work through whatever shit you're dealing with until you can actually laugh at the challenge of it. Yeah? Until you actually align and connect with that path that's inevitable and the ultimate, you've got work to do. That's the bottom-up approach. Yeah? And once you have it, you can celebrate it and keep bringing it through, and then you'll keep growing into the potential. Yeah? So if I said to you all, what percentage of your true potential are you living right now? Your true divine potential. Nolene.
Oh, not much. Maybe 30 or 40%.
So this is, if you look at the video that I did at the Paradigm Shift Summit last year, everybody says to me, I want to find and fulfill my purpose. The only way you're going to do that is if you've found and fulfill your true potential. The only way you're going to find and fulfill your true potential is if you know how to maintain your natural state, which is growth. If you don't know how to maintain the natural state of growth, you're not keeping up with the evolution of consciousness, expanding into the new and unknown, right? Because it's not repeating itself. You can't go, excuse me, what was that? I asked a master this one time. He said something. I said, sorry, I didn't understand. He just looked at me and shook his finger. Don't make me repeat myself. Right? The law of repeatlessness is pay attention. Yeah? So if you're able to consciously maintain the synergy within nature, soul and food, which is nature, nurture, nourish, you'll be able to maintain your growth and keep up with whatever challenges the divine sends your way. Yeah? So to be able to do that, the only way you can do that, the only way you can truly nature, nurture, nourish is purity. Right? Any trace of impurity is the pin that pops the balloon. Right? If it's not something you would do in the presence of the divine in a supernatural world, nirvana, don't bring it into this world. How much is it alright if I went back and sprayed a little bit of Roundup in an indigenous community back in the Amazon 300 years ago? Yeah? You can see how it's completely inappropriate. That's what I'm saying. What's the point of going off and living in a community when they're still chemtrailing us? We have to root out the whole problem. Yeah, we can't just stop a little thing. Yeah, makes sense. So purity helps you maintain your natural state of growth towards your potential to be able to fulfill your purpose, which is everybody merging. Yeah, you're either consciously on that path or you're not. Yeah, makes sense.
Can you tell us a little bit about your book? I believe it's a course in consciousness, is it?
It's not a course. It's just it's a very definitive explanation of what's what. Yeah. This is where, because it is all-encompassing, all-embracing, all-inclusive. Everybody who knows me, I've been doing this for 35 years, and I still don't have an elevator speech. If somebody says to me, Brian, what do you do? I go, well, you know. And like this is the ongoing joke, you know, people come and see me and I say, they can walk away and then they try to explain to their family.
Thank you, Brian. Sorry.
You're right.
Thank you very much.
Judy calls.
Yeah, I can't stand longer.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Lovely.
So this is where the ongoing joke is to try to sum up what I do. People go away and they say, what did you experience with Brian? They go, it's beyond words. Yeah? Everybody gets to the point where they go beyond words. How do you market something that's beyond words? I'm still struggling with that, you know. So this is where the ongoing joke is. It's like $1 million prize if you can do an elevator speech for me. Yeah. So how do you encompass something that's all-embracing, all-encompassing, all-inclusive? I still don't know how to explain what I do. Right. So the nature of life, it's the essence of all of that. It's like when Christy said about when you understand this chart, when you understand how that chart works, it's so obvious, yeah, how it all comes together, the detail of it, right? But it's a matter of just having that perspective, yeah, and then being able to know how to translate that down to your individual self, and then how to transmit that to other individuals in a way that's relevant, yeah. So it's a challenge to try and sum up. But if you want to have a read of it all on my website, and it comes as an ebook. It's $45 as an ebook. It's a 600-page textbook. Yeah, it's a study. It's a study into the nature of life. It's what makes you you. It's what makes the reality what it is. Everything that feeds into it in every possible angle. Right. And then, like say, there's a printed copy of it. It's now $210 because I've just got a new edition. One lady looked at it, and I deal with a lot of pretentious intellectuals, and she opened up my book 2/3 of the way through, and she said, Brian, if I try to read this, I just don't understand it. I said, well, that's why you usually read books from the beginning, right? If you open up a book on chemistry or physics and you turn to the page 2/3 of the way through, do you expect to understand it? No. You have to have the humility to build the knowledge and understanding as you go. Right, so I start with a very simple language, what, when, how, where, why and who, and at the end of it we're exploring all the elements of consciousness on an individual and a collective level. Yeah? That's my best summary of it. Yeah.
Yeah, good.
So, alrighty, well it's 1:45, is it?
Thank you very much.
You're
Brian.
welcome, Jennie. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the opportunity of sharing this.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try and put more and more information about this on the internet for free, and eventually we'll have circles like this happening where it's done with universal Ho'oponopono, so we can actually help people for the stage they're at, and and address what's going on individually with great accuracy. Yeah.
And this up here is on Brian's website if you go onto the blog, and it's right down the bottom of the
If you
blog.
just type in universal Ho'oponopono in Google,
Okay.
universal Ho'oponopono, Brian Gerard Schaefer, it comes up. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you everybody. That was
Thank
fun,
you.
wasn't it?
Wonderful.
Yeah.
It was